Thank you. Good afternoon, right? It's 12:01. All right, well, welcome. My name is Becky Keith, and I'm the CEO of IntelliBoard, and today we are going to talk about the metrics that actually matter and what it's costing your organization or institution to ignore them. My hope for today is that regardless of whether you have IntelliBoard or not, you are able to think about your data strategy at your institution, your organization, and take away some value that can be applied to your institution, regardless of whether or not you have IntelliBoard. We're all trying to solve the data problem. There's data everywhere. There's lots of data noise. You have data in your Moodle system, you have data in your student information system, or your CRM, or your video tool, or your attendance tool, or this plugin, or that LTI. There's data everywhere. So how can we identify the most valuable data for our institution to take action on it? So today we're talking about the noise, data noise versus the impact, and aligning that to our goals and looking at the roles that need access to that data. So we often measure everything. We measure clicks, we measure login, we measure submission time, submission date, attendance, all of the data that's constantly being measured and stored. But that doesn't always give us the direction. It doesn't give us the direction that we need to make it impactful. And the result often is vague notifications, lagging indicators, identifying learners too late who have already dropped or been dropped from a program, dropped from their eligibility for their scholarship. And then we put them on probation and we invest resources in probation instead of actively identifying those learners. So students who are struggling at the start of this, or oftentimes, and this kind of came from a conversation with a learner, with a student who was a strong student in secondary, in high school, strong AP, advanced placements, high GPA, intrinsically motivated learner who then went to college, went to his higher ed institution, and was also an athlete and was excelling, was doing well, August, September, October, and then around October, it all started to pile up and started to get stressful. And the learner didn't really know how he was doing, and he didn't really know the impact of his current situation on his overall success at the end of the term. And he received one email that was a notification that was sent from the instructor to him, his coach, and the advisor that said, this student is performing below peers. That's it. One vague notification with no action. The coach had little to go on, and so he responded to the email and said, "Are you taking care of this?" To which the 18-year-old boy said, "Yes, absolutely." And then that was it. And then the semester passes, and the student doesn't find out until January when he receives a letter in the mail that he's now on academic probation and lost his scholarship. A strong student being lost for no reason. There's so much data, but if it's not actionable and it's a vague notification, that's not good enough anymore. So today we're talking about how to build stronger risk, identify learners at risk earlier and often, and how different roles at the institution could have come together in that specific situation to identify and save that student. So which metrics, so when metrics don't drive action, the learners disengage, the interventions come too late, and then often the retention dollars are missed. And that's the real cost. The real cost is not just the learner, but also what it's costing the institution as well. We all know that it costs a lot less to retain a student than it does to bring in a new learner. So if you just take an ROI, the return on investment, if you retain 50 students at $3,000 in tuition, then you've protected $150,000 in revenue, not just for that 1 year, that one term, but the next term and the next term and the next term, because they stay with you for 4 years. Okay, so activity metrics versus impact metrics. The activity metrics tell us what happened. The impact metrics tell us what matters, what to do next. So when we're looking at a risk score, engagement, performance, trends, it shows us where tuition and learning outcomes are truly at risk. So the activity metrics, you've got logins, clicks, time spent, page views, and it's often, where is it? It's hidden within the course. So you're clicking here and clicking here and clicking here and clicking on an individual activity to identify all of this data noise. So how do we turn the activity metrics into impact metrics? Impact metrics that tell us the story of a risk score or engagement rates, performance trends, tuition at risk. So however you define risk within your institution, transforming that raw data into data that actually matters, and maybe looking at less data, but data that provides more direction. So we know that clicks don't equal success, and impact metrics protect the learner and protect our tuition. So once we identify the data that supports risk and identifying learners at risk early, if however you identify your learners, if it's just looking at students who haven't logged in X number of days, or however you identify risk, if you're doing it on your own, once you have that risk, then look at those throughout your organization or institution that should have access to that data. So different roles need different insights. Advisors need learner behavior, instructors need daily interaction, your managers or advisors, your academic leadership need to see patterns, your leadership needs to see ROI and compliance. And if everyone gets the same report, then it's not actionable and no one acts on it. So stepping back to say, let's look at the organization and look at the roles across the organization and what data would allow this person to do their job better. If this role, who may not be inside Moodle, if the financial aid or the registrar or your advisor or your dean, or in corporate, if it's the HR or the training manager, the supervisor, if that person is not the instructor or the LMS admin, they don't live inside Moodle, what real-time learning data would be most valuable for that person to have delivered to them every day so that they can do their job better? What data would that be? So starting with the roles across the institution, what data would be impactful for them to kind of build a community focused around learners and focused around success. So if we think of it like a funnel, there's too much raw activity at the top, and it needs to be distilled down into meaningful signals and then actionable insights at the bottom. So how do we take all of the raw data and transform it into a meaningful metric? How do we turn that meaningful metric into action? How do we deliver that to the end user, to the advisor, to whomever at the institution that could actually make an impact on that learner? So less data and more direction. Taking massive amounts of all of the data noise and identifying what's key, what's most valuable for the role, less data, more action. And I have a quick example video if we cross our fingers that our audio works.
Well, I've got one graph that to me is sort of tells the big part.
Let me back up, sorry. This is an example of our pacing report that they have customized a little bit, but it's an example of taking all of that raw data to identify pacing. What matters to me? Students who are off pace. If you are this is the New Jersey Center for Teaching and Learning. They're working with adults on accreditation for getting their teaching certificate. So what matters to them is the adult learners are on pace. They stick with the pace of the course. That pace is a great example of impact data. The data noise is their login, their activity, their engagement in the course. But the impact data, the pacing is how long have they been in the course, how long are they expected to take this course, how many activities are they expected to complete each week, and then building a pacing calculation that is the impact data, and then getting it in the right hands to the right people at the right time, like the advisors. Again, the advisors typically aren't in the LMS, but this is what happens when you transform your data and give it to the right people.
Well, I've got one graph that to me is sort of tells the big part of the story. I'm sure there's more we can do later, but this is from March 2023 through May 2025. Each dot represents this axis is how many credits were completed per month. This is the pace in credits per month completed. This is the months. And you can see that our target was always around 1. And this particular group, the alternate route shortage area teachers, those are people who with a bachelor's degree and could have a bachelor's degree in French literature. They want to become a physics teacher. They have no physics credits, and maybe they have an unqualifying GPA. The special program we have approval for lets us remedy all of that and turn them into a teacher. But they were moving too slowly. They were down here at 0.6? Mm-hmm. And it was just slowly going up, but very slowly. This is when we launched we had our advisors and this report in place. We'd been talking to the people here, but it was about generalities. It was like, you should go faster, like your mom telling you should eat vegetables. It doesn't have much effect. When we put the report in place and the advisors had that to talk about, we had this jump from September to October, and now it's still going up. And now these guys are now around 1.4, which means they're outperforming the people in the other program. Hence, we're bringing this to the other programs. So, but this is as dramatic a result as you're ever going to see, I think.
That is amazing. In 1 month, you jumped. You doubled.
It's a discontinuity in the graph, and there's nothing else that changed in that month. So we could probably do a research paper on this, and we'd have to do significance and all of that. But it's pretty clear without having to go too deeply that if you could get this in your programs all the time, if you multiply this by our tuition rate, that becomes our tuition revenue by month, and you could see our money goes way up. If you divide by the number of credits in the program, that's how many months it's going to take someone to complete a program.
So having the right data, the transformed data, getting rid of the data noise, identifying the most critical data and getting it in the hands of the right people who can then take action on that data, informed action on that data. The outcome is successful for the learner, but I don't know if you caught it at the end, it's also successful for the organization who then is able to increase their revenue from retaining these learners and them going faster. So who needs what metrics? So at the bottom, we have the instructors with they need daily learner activity. Managers need to spot engagement patterns, leadership needs, retention, ROI, compliance. So matching the metrics to the role is when your data becomes actionable. And not just looking at those who are in the LMS, looking at those that are in the LMS. Learner dashboards and instructor dashboards are critical as well, but then also taking that to really build the community around. So matching the metric to the role and making it actionable. So we'll pause here for just a few minutes, and I'm curious, which roles in your organization is most unsupported by data? Which roles do you feel like in your corporation or institution or government, which roles do you all feel are most under-supported with data? Do we have any?
I was just going to say it's probably the tutors themselves. We'd probably need more information, I think, and the people I work for. The tutors would be this sort of information, where you can give them information about the students, about their, well, we wouldn't call it pace, but yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah, that was the tutors themselves? Is that what you said? Great. And we do, to encourage participation and give you a take-home souvenir, we do have little bottles of Scottish whiskey to provide those who participate. So, anyone else? Yeah, that's...
Who didn't have enough last night?
Take it home, take-home souvenir. Anyone else? No? Okay. You just wanted to participate. I know it wasn't the whiskey.
I know, you sold it so well. Possibly course administrators, officers, those in that type of role. But I haven't been at my institution for that long, but I think it's just my feeling based on my previous experience in that type of role. It's so hands-on, supporting the students, with the course materials and so on. It's hard to have that bigger picture view of how individual students are doing.
Yeah, that's great. And often the administrators or the deans, the data that they have is the student information system data, which is more demographic data, or it's after the term. If you use something like Power BI and you take the data after the term and review, or your student information system might have like DFW rates, your Ds, your Fs, your withdrawals, and it creates a ratio for your DFW courses. Well, if you're finding that data out after the term ends, then yeah, you can take action on it so that next term that program or course is improved. But what about all of those learners that just completed that course this term? So looking at something, a calculation like a DFW, again, that raw data of Ds, Fs, withdrawals into a rate or a ratio, and getting that in the hands of the administrators, the academic leadership early, so they can start taking action and reviewing what's happening in those programs or courses throughout the term. Okay, so how we do that, we have a risk score. Our risk score cuts through the noise by comparing learners to their peers and assigning them a score, like a credit score. It makes it very, very simple, very, very easy. Everyone understands. It's also color-coded, so it's lighter green all the way to darker red, and it looks at 18 different components to build a risk score. And that's the way we do it. There's 4 different ways to identify risk. However you identify risk, same idea, getting that in the hands and looking at the risk over time. And then here's what happens. When you identify the risk, the data that matters, and you get that in the hands of the right people, they can make those interventions. I just want to push here, human interaction. We have little images of people as a reminder, it's human to human. Just the email notification is great, the text notification is great, but also having that human contact. We've seen with IntelliBoard, the institutions who apply that level to their intervention have a much greater success rate with their interventions. So the power of alignment. Instructors can be proactive, advisors can see trends, leadership can forecast retention and revenue, and when you put it all together, it builds a community around your learners. And I have one more quick little video just to show impact as well of getting, and it speaks to the
board. So
deans.
Around midterm, we did a deep dive analysis at the midterm grades in the spring, and we saw that 25% of the enrolled students at the SUBR campus was at risk for failing one or more courses. So then we're reporting up to Chancellor Pierre and to the CFO. We wanted to make a connection of students who are failing versus the potential dollars at risk. And so that's how this was birthed. So this would give you a week by week. If the faculty members are updating their grade book on a weekly basis, you could track the at-risk students. And when you're reporting out at your president cabinet meeting, you could say, hey, we need this additional resources to put these interventions, because if we invest $25,000, we could save $2.5 million, right? So we're getting into how do we look at reallocating resources so that we can help stabilize our budget between terms and between academic years. So think about it. If 25% of the students at midterm were at risk for failing one or more courses, we know they're not going to progress. And what's the probability of them being retained? Because in that report too, what we added was academic standing. So you could quickly filter by academic standing. If they're already on probation, you can narrow out that filter to see, okay, these are all the students on probation warning, and they're failing 2 courses. We need to start getting ready for that $2 million difference or shortfall, right? That we're not going to recoup in the next year. So if that was 200 students, now we correlate back with enrollment management and say, hey, we need to increase enrollment by 200 to replace the students that we're going to lose, because it's going to do that. Or can we put them on the intervention to get them back to pass, to keep them progress aboard? So
another just example of taking that raw data, making it actionable, making it meaningful, getting it in the right hands. So the weekly cabinet is looking at what's actually happening in your Moodle today to identify and make it actionable for right now, instead of, like, I loved when he talked about taking it to enrollment to say, yeah, we're going to go after these learners, but we also know that if they're at risk in multiple courses, then we can tell enrollment to boost numbers 200. Last, we'll end with this, and this is the framework that I would love for you to take away of auditing where you are now. So what's in use, who's using them? Maybe it's data overload. Maybe instead of 15 reports, they just need the one most valuable report, and they need to understand what to do with it. So auditing your current reports, what's in use, who's using them, or what reports do you not have, what data do you not have access to that these roles could really benefit from? And then role mapping, who needs it? Why do they need it? What are they expected to do with it? Prioritize those metrics, and then build momentum. It's when you have the intervention, you save a student, you identify a learner who wasn't doing well, and then you can see at the end of the term that they were successful, they persisted, they went on to they continued in the program. Recognize that. Talk about it at the institution, so data becomes part of, data literacy is just part of your daily life, and you're using it to separate the noise and align your metrics. And thank you all for coming. Sorry to run out of time. We do have a booth downstairs, so feel free to come on down and continue the conversation. I do believe we have a few more bottles of I almost said Irish whiskey, Scottish whiskey.
We do have about 5 minutes for
do.
questions, if anyone has any questions.
I was wondering, would it be more beneficial if courses are standardized to kind of help this? Because I feel like if you have thousands of courses all set up in different ways, it's going to be difficult to make this work well.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And often, a lot of times when we do come in, that's one of the first things that has to be done is a little bit of cleanup. And you also identify things that you weren't expecting all the time. There's lots of things that aren't set up correctly, and they didn't realize it. And that's just to me, it's an added value, unexpected added value of having clean data. But also the risk points, the way that particular metric is done is great because it's a statistical comparison to learners in that course. So even if your courses are a mess, courses are run differently, you've got some that are more hybrid, some that are more this or that, the risk score is that statistical comparison in that course, because you can't take a risk algorithm, a predictive learning algorithm, and apply it to all of your courses throughout the entire institution. And so the risk score helps with that.
A lot of time from my customers, I get the question, we want to know what the engagement is. What time is a student taking in a course? How long are they acting in Moodle? And can you measure that?
Yeah, of course, we do. We actually have a heat map. And the original use case of that was, one of the original benefits of that was that they were staffing their help desk, their student help desk at the wrong times. They were able to look at the heat map and identify when learners were actually completing their homework and getting online, and make sure that they had sufficient staff to cover those hours.